YouTube, the Chicago Bulls have had a very transformative offseason in 2024, and if you've been paying attention, it's obvious that they're entering some kind of transitionary rebuild phase of their franchise. But I will say, I do have a hot take in this video, and that is that if some certain things were to work out a certain way with the Chicago Bulls this season, they could end up being the X factors of the Eastern Conference in the 2025 upcoming NBA season. I completely understand that they've traded away DeMar DeRozan, who was, the team's best player for the last couple seasons. I understand that you trade away Alex Caruso, and I understand that the plan is to build around guys like Matas Buzelis, who you selected with the 11th overall pick in the NBA draft. All of these things are understood by me, but I will say, Zach Lavine's coming back from injury, Lonzo Ball could be coming back from injury, you still have talented players on the roster that can help you next season, like Nikola Vucevic, Coby White, newly acquired Josh Giddey, and some other pieces we're going to talk about in this video. This is a Chicago Bulls deep dive for the 2024 NBA offseason and the 2025 NBA season. We're going to be going through every move they've made this offseason. So that includes trades, draft, free agency, re-signings, departures, and additions. And after we discuss all of those things, we're going to talk about their entire roster, doing a big time deep dive on who you can expect to see on the floor for the 2025 NBA season for the Chicago Bulls. One thing is very clear, the Bulls are moving in a different direction, and I think if you're a Chicago Bulls fan, you got to be pretty happy about that. We've talked about how the Bulls have spent the last few years in NBA purgatory, which basically mediocrity anywhere from the 6th to the 10th seed, which is a revolving door of around 500 winning seasons and no clear direction other than expecting the same thing year in and year out. This season is going to be a lot different than that, and I think, again, if you're a Bulls fan, you got to be encouraged about that. So let's get right into the 2024-2025 season deep dive for the Chicago Bulls franchise and why I think their season is going to be so unpredictable and an X factor, quite frankly, in the 2025 season. Let's get right into the deep dive, folks. So like I said, we're going to be starting with the Chicago Bulls offseason, and we'll start with the re-signings, and you actually had a very big re-signing in former top lottery pick Patrick Williams, who returns on a 5-year deal with the Chicago Bulls. And a lot of people are saying Patrick Williams is not living up to his potential in the NBA. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because if you look at his season last year, I think he's been improving the last few years. And one thing is very clear about Patrick Williams, he is an excellent defender, okay? So you're going to get good defense out of Patrick Williams. I know people see 4th overall pick and they think, oh, this guy's got to be a superstar or it's a bust. Definitely not the case. Patrick Williams unfortunately was injured last season for a lot of it, but he ended up shooting 40% from 3 on about 3 attempts per game, and that is another strong suit of his. He's an excellent 3-point shooter, never averaging under 39% from 3 in his entire career so far. This will be his 5th season with the Chicago Bulls, and as I mentioned, the defense, the shooting, and I think just overall you can expect a excellent versatile 3-and-D wing on the defensive end of the floor, if nothing else. People want his rebounding to be better, people want his scoring to be better, but he's just, at the end of the day, not that type of player. And I think what you get from him is definitely justified for this contract, so I like this re-signing a lot. I think Patrick Williams is still a young player at 22 years old, and I'm sure he's still improving with that young age, and this is a talented two-way player. That's it for the re-signings, but I do like the Patrick Williams re-signing. For the additions, you actually add Chris Duarte via the DeMar DeRozan trade with the Sacramento Kings, and Chris Duarte, he'll be entering his 4th season in the NBA, previously with the Indiana Pacers and the Sacramento Kings. Chris Duarte is a guy that you can, expect to come off the bench, get you some buckets, right? I'm not saying he's a great scorer or, an efficient player or anything like that, but I do think he adds some level of offensive pop off the bench. If you're going to play him at the 2 guard off the bench, it's certainly an option. And I just think, getting a player that has some offensive upside, could be a decent move. And, whether or not he plays next season, we'll have to see what the lineup looks like night to night, but, you got to get something for DeMar DeRozan, and it's not just the draft picks, and that is Chris Duarte in that regard. Now, you also add Josh Giddey via the Alex Caruso trade, one of the only straight up player for player trades I can remember in recent memory. He kind of slid out of that Thunder rotation last season, but make no mistake, Josh Giddey is a versatile player on the offensive side of the ball. He's basically like a giant point guard, and Josh Giddey, honestly, in my opinion, has some of the best playmaking upside of any young player in the league. We know he's a great rebounder, triple-double threat every time he steps on the floor. He's not going to be a massive volume scorer, but I think his best ability is, like I said, a giant point guard with massive playmaking upside that you can rely on night to night to get guys involved in that offense. And his rebounding as well, I'm not saying he's a bad scorer. I mean, he certainly isn't. People forget Josh Giddey is still only 21 years old. He's basically a point guard in a forward's body, right? So he's kind of like the size of a point forward, but he's really just a point guard. And there are a lot of things you can do with a player like that, and I would imagine he'll have a big role on the Chicago Bulls, who really have needed a primary playmaker for the last few years. This is a guy that can come in right away and, run an offense and just quite frankly make plays and see the court just like not a lot of other players can at his age and his size. I mean, that is his unique ability. And, in a bigger role, you could see his scoring numbers increase a lot. I mean, in 2023, his second year with the Thunder, he averaged almost 17 points per game on, decent efficiency. So this is a guy that, he can score when he has to. He's going to be a great rebounder for the position. He's going to run your offense and, he's going to have that court vision that is very rare and unique for a player of his size. Still only 21 years old, still probably getting better. I think this is a great move, to trade away Alex Caruso. Didn't fit the timeline of your team clearly, and you're going in a different direction. Now you get a guy that could be the playmaker of this team's future, no question about it. Another move I like from the Bulls, getting another high upside, big time player, is Jalen Smith on a 3-year deal. Jalen Smith previously last season with the Indiana Pacers, and I think Jalen Smith is a player that has a ton of value as far as his ceiling, right? Like, we see Jalen Smith make plays repeatedly that are extremely rare for a player to make. Okay, so the defensive end of the floor, right? He has unique ability there. He's a great athlete, was inconsistent in the Pacers rotation, but all of the tools are there for Jalen Smith to be, again, a very unique player moving forward. I mean, he's only 24 years old, and this will actually be his 6th season in the league. And one thing that Jalen Smith did really well last year was shoot the three. He is a power forward center, right? Probably going to come in and replace Andre Drummond in that regard as your backup 5. Again, the shot blocking is very solid. The shooting last season, he shot 42% on threes on 2.4 attempts per game. He is a great finisher, 60% from the field last season. Good offensive rebounder. Like, this guy is just an absolute kind of just an athletic freak, and I think his tools to be able to space the floor, and I think if Coach Donovan can make him more consistent night to night, that is what you're looking for Jalen Smith, to understand the game a little bit better and make those extremely rare and valuable plays on both ends of the floor for a player of his size. He could be a backup power forward, he could be a backup center, but like, he's an undersized center really, 6'9", 215, but I think he has the ability, like, with his athleticism to maybe guard centers. Okay, so let me know down in the comment section, Bulls fans, where are you expecting Jalen Smith's role to be? He did sign a 3-year contract with you guys. Again, one of the more unique players on the market and one of the higher upside, guys that I think if this signing works the best it possibly can, he could actually be a freak talent. And if it, stays like it has been, at the end of the day, you get a guy that has a very interesting skill set that might not be the most consistent or be able to be a winning type of role player. But I just think, taking the risk and, swinging high on this 3-year signing is a big thing for the Bulls. I actually like the pick because what the Bulls appear to be doing to me is just, retaining and adding players that have unique value like Josh Giddey and Jalen Smith. These are both players with, again, incredibly rare skill sets, and they're both young. I think that's kind of what you're seeing what the Bulls are building with this core. We could talk about Matas Buzelis, who has a similar type of upside. So I like the signing for Jalen Smith. Bulls fans, let me know. And for the departures, we're gonna have Alex Caruso. Okay, so Alex Caruso, one of the best top tier role players in the league, again, doesn't fit the timeline of the team. You weren't going to extend him probably when his contract was up, and you could get great value for him right now, and that is Josh Giddey, who is a very different type of player, but I think, all things considered, that is a great return for a player like Alex Caruso, because Josh Giddey is someone you hope to build with, while Alex Caruso is more of a help a contender right now type of player. So I think it's a great move for what the Bulls are trying to do. But again, Alex Caruso, the versatile defender, all NBA defender, total utility guy, great role player, probably an S tier role player for me in the league. But again, just doesn't really fit this timeline. So the trade makes a ton of sense for me, and I actually think they got about as good as they could get as far as value. So DeMar DeRozan, traded to the Sacramento Kings. You get Chris Duarte out of it and draft picks. I mean, again, he was not going to play in Chicago next season, like, no matter what. He was clearly done with Chicago. Chicago's clearly looking to move on from him. He had some great seasons with the Bulls, some of the best of his career, especially early on with Chicago. And I just think, getting some draft picks for him is big, because this is a player that you weren't going to have on the floor anyway next season. So I just like that the Bulls are, trying to move in a different direction, right? They are a team that just didn't have a direction for the past few years. And as I mentioned in the intro, even if you disagree with the direction they're going in, they are moving in one. That I think is a positive. Like, whatever it is, like, that is a positive to have a vision and try to execute it, instead of just being okay with, 8 seed to 10 seed every single season. It's clear that this front office has made mistakes, right? And I'm sure you guys know what those are. But like, again, the fact that they're willing to just, move forward and put unique talents on the floor and hope that, some of them hit, I think is pretty cool. I think it's exciting if you're a Bulls fan. This is, again, kind of a transition period. I'm not sure it's a full rebuild quite yet. And, we're going to talk about the roster and how I think, if certain things things develop the right way next season, this is one of the more unpredictable teams in the NBA who could have massive upside in the 2025 season if those things come to fruition. Andre Drummond departs in free agency. That was your backup center. Played great in Chicago as the backup 5, coming in for Nikola Vucevic. He signs with my 76ers on a 2-year, $10 million deal. I couldn't be happier as a Sixers fan, but again, you bring in Jalen Smith, right? And Andre Drummond, over 30 years old, like, just doesn't make a ton of sense if you're going to bring him back. So I love the commitment to the younger guys. And, while Andre Drummond's a great backup 5, one of the best in the league, I just think, what is the value of, re-signing him? So great offseason for the Bulls. I actually think it's probably an A+ because you move forward, right? I keep hammering this home, but it's probably the biggest thing about the Bulls that I like this offseason is that they're trying something, okay? Like, maybe it won't work, who knows? And maybe they're, throwing a bunch of pieces that might not fit, whatever it is, like, whatever your critique is, I think that's fair if you want to critique the way they're doing it, but they're doing something finally. And I think that's exciting and encouraging if you're a Bulls fan. It shows their willingness to make changes, big ones that affect their franchise, and actually do something about the mediocrity. And, either way it works out, if it works out the best and they start competing soon, that's great. If it doesn't and they have to enter a long-term rebuild, that's great too, because at least you get it over with, okay? It was gonna happen regardless. This was always going to happen with this Bulls roster. You gave it a chance, stacking up pieces in 2021 didn't quite work out the way you wanted it to. You gotta move on and get what you can for these players, and I think they did a fantastic job of that. And just the fact that they're doing anything at all is good. And I think, again, taking high swings on high upside young players is probably the way to go. It's exactly what a rebuilding team does. The only difference is this team isn't necessarily doing it all through the draft, and I think that is basically the same thing, other than you traded for Josh Giddey. You signed Jalen Smith, right? You see a lot of tanking or rebuilding teams, whatever, tank season after season to get these high lottery picks. The Bulls are like, we have players we can trade that don't fit our timeline. We don't have to tank year after year to get those high upside young guys. We could just trade for them, and some of them are already in the league, like Josh Giddey. So again, A+ for me for the offseason. Bulls committing to something, and I think that's a great move. I think it's necessary. I thought it was necessary a couple years ago, but I'm not going to discredit them for what they've done in the past. They're attempting to make it right. I just think the commitment to do something is the biggest thing to note here. So A+ for me, no question about it. Now let's get into the draft because it's exciting for me. Matas Buzelis, probably my favorite player in this draft, other than Jared McCain, because I'm a Sixers fan. But going into the draft, I will say Jared McCain, probably not on the same tier as me as Matas Buzelis, because he was probably my favorite player in the draft, period. His skill set is so intriguing to me. You select him at 11 overall, and that value is immense. I mean, I actually thought this guy would go top 5. I think a lot of people thought he'd at least sneak into the top 7 or 8. Now all of a sudden, Matas Buzelis from G League Ignite is 11th overall to his hometown team, the Chicago Bulls. That is such a great story and a great feeling if you're a Bulls fan. Getting one of the highest upside players in the draft at 11th overall, that is also a hometown kid. Like, that's just such a fun story. Love it. But let's talk about Matas Buzelis, because I think his skill set is super high ceiling. It's incredible. I mean, he's a 6'10" player that can do a lot of different things. I still think he's not, anywhere near his full potential, right? 6'10". He is a good ball handler. Like, you're really bulking up on these giant point guard, point forward type players, Josh Giddey and now Buzelis. Excellent ball handler for 6'10". He is a great finisher. We saw in the G League all his alley-oops, his, finishing ability in the summer league, right? We saw all these things, in the summer league. He had a ton of, posters and lob finishes, and that's a great sign. Not only can he handle the ball, like, this is going to be an amazing transition player. I don't think people understand how great Buzelis is going to be, like, right out of the gate in the transition game, in the fast break offense. Like, he's just going to be top tier in that regard for his entire career, I think, because of the ability to handle the ball, to pass in the fast break, and lob finish, and finish in general. He's just a talented player. That is, I think, going to be his best suit, right away. He can do like floaters, step backs, like he can shoot a little bit as well. I mean, I think, catch and shoot is probably gonna be a lot easier for him, just the way he, looked to me last season. Something definitely could develop in that regard, but this is a guy, 6'10", that's gonna be able to release it high. I always talk about these forwards that can shoot. You think about Michael Porter Jr., Keegan Murray, Kevin Durant, like, these guys get these shots off over everybody. Larry Markkinen, another one, right? You're not blocking their shots. Like, I don't care how close you are as a contester, like, you have to stay closer to them because the closeout distance is so much longer, because their release is so high, right? Like Kristaps Porzingis, Brook Lopez, you have to be attached to these guys behind the arc, and that makes it tough for a power forward or small forward or whatever it's going to be to stay on the perimeter for that long, and it really opens up a lot of things for your offense if they can be a real threat threat from the outside. So if Buzelis can develop that elite, or not even elite, just like pretty solid catch and shoot game, it's going to draw defenders out more than a guard would. So that is exceptional, you know, because of the high release. You know, he shot inefficiently last season. Everybody did on that Ignite team, so I can't really fault him too much for that. You look at Ron Holland's numbers, these are not necessarily indicative of their skills and of their shooting ability. It's kind of hard to gauge. So, you know, I know he had some struggles in the summer league from those, you know, perimeter jump shots, but listen, come on, it is summer league, it is G League, it is, you know, it's not necessarily the end of the world. If the mechanics look good and you can see the consistency in the mechanics, then the shots will eventually just start going down. That's basically how you determine, in my opinion, how a shooter is going to be good despite his numbers. Okay, so anybody worrying about his college production, his summer league production, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. Okay, because, you know, the mechanics are the most important thing, and if, you know, he has those, then there's nothing to worry about for me. But the defense is going to be, you know, exceptionally versatile for Buzelis. I think his instincts are good. I think he flies around the court, and we talked about his size. Like, it is, you know, exceptional. He'll be, you know, hopefully able to guard 3s and 4s. He has the athletic profile to, you know, guard perimeter players. So, you know, just a very well-rounded skill set for Buzelis. And I think if it can develop, you know, as the seasons go on, this is a do-it-all type of player with unique size and skill set in the league. And we talked about how Josh Giddey, how Jalen Smith, these guys are putting on the team that just can do things that not a lot of other players can do in the league, right? And they're all young, they're all still growing, and Buzelis potentially has the highest ceiling of any player on this team. To get him at 11 is, it's absolutely crazy. I mean, I do think there is going to be a growth period for Buzelis. I'm not sure he's going to be the type of rookie that comes in right away and dominates. Like, I don't think that's necessarily where he's at right now, but certainly the skill set is intriguing enough to where you got to give him minutes on the floor next season, and you have to see what he's about next season. But either way, like, the ceiling of this kid is through the roof for me. Just the, you know, everything I just talked about is very rare, and that's kind of the theme of the Bulls, right? And that's partially why they're such an X factor, is because we could see a world where Jalen Smith, Josh Giddey, and Matas Buzelis all come out and play their amazing basketball next season. It's probably more likely that just Josh Giddey will be able to be the most consistent out of those guys, but assuming like Jalen Smith or Matas Buzelis come out of the gate next season with the Bulls, and they're actually like more ready than we think to contribute night to night, like, you know, in a consistent way, I'm not sure, like, you know, this isn't some of the most freakish core you could possibly imagine. You know, they're all around 6'10", they're all capable of many things that other players at their size aren't on both ends. Like, it's just going to be insane. I think Buzelis is the perfect fit and pick for this team. And again, the transition, that's going to be his biggest thing when he gets out in transition. The ball handling ability, the lob finishing, the finishing in general, the passing, like, he's just going to be a monster in transition year one. That's what you can expect. And defensively, I think he slides in right away. One of your best defenders, and certainly one of your most versatile. A+ pick, A+ offseason for the Bulls. And, you know, we'll get into why they're, you know, potential X factor next season right now. Let's do the roster deep dive for the Chicago Bulls. My favorite part of the deep dive videos, folks. We're going to go through player by player, and, you know, I'm going to give my thoughts on them, what you can expect. I'm going to be sprinkling in why I think this, you know, all these players added up collectively could make the most X factor, you know, unpredictable teams next season, which is an absolute good thing if you're a Bulls fan, because unpredictable for me means like they could be super good and, like, I mean, miles better than we expect, or they could be, you know, somewhere in the middle between like super high lottery team and, you know, play-in or playoff team. But like, you guys get what I'm saying. X factor is unpredictable, volatile. It could go either way, and I think the ceiling is super high, but also the floor is super low. Let's get into the entire roster deep dive for the Chicago Bulls for the 2025 upcoming season and their roster player by player. Let's get into it, folks. So we're gonna have to start with maybe the most intriguing, and I would say definitely the best player on this team at this point, but probably the most unpredictable for next season. I actually have a interesting take, I think, on Zach Lavine. And Zach Lavine, listen, I've been critical of Zach Lavine. I think most people have, and I do think there are valid criticisms. And I think the Bulls signing him to that massive extension has really hurt their ability to build the roster the way they want around some of their young core players that we'll talk about in a little bit. But at the end of the day, what nobody can criticize Zach Lavine for is his talent, okay? Because if you really look at it, Zach Lavine's probably one of the top 15, you know, best talents in the league. He has so much ability for a scorer that you could possibly want, okay? The bag is tremendous. The perimeter shooting is tremendous. The probably one of the best dunkers ever. A lot of people say the best dunker of all time. He gets to the free throw line. He is ungodly athletic, right? He's got good size for a two guard. He is so skilled skilled in so many areas. And I think that is where the criticism comes into play, is that he has all of this talent. He's also a pretty solid playmaker for what you can expect from a two guard who is your best offensive player. So all of the talent, where's the wins? Where's the impact on winning, right? I will say this about Zach Lavine, because, this is my take on him this season. He's in a very once in a lifetime unique position next season to be able to literally silence the entire world and every critic he has, okay? If Zach Lavine comes out next season and just shuts everybody up, that's actually what I want, and I think he is in a position to do that not many players get to be in that are so heavily criticized, okay? No one's expecting this team to be a playoff team. No one's expecting this team to win 50 games, right? It is in Zach Lavine's hands to be able to carry this team to big heights after everyone is so against him in the NBA community, after probably everything you're going to read about Zach Lavine, maybe outside of the Bulls media, is most likely going to be 80% negative. He can come out next season and average 25, 27 points per game, play a full healthy season, knock on wood, which is mostly out of his control at that point. But if he comes out and does those things and shoots a high percentage, then all of a sudden he's worth what he's getting paid, okay? And then all of a sudden he's impacting winning, right? If he can get this team to a play-in spot as the best player, if he can get this team to a 6 seed as the best player, I mean, those are the things that he is able to do next season, and it's all up to him whether or not he can put that type of season together. But if Zach Lavine is able to do that, I don't see how anyone can still criticize him at that point for leading a team to that type of season, and as well as putting up all of the individual success that he's certainly capable of and that we expect from him. So, hopefully Zach Lavine comes out next season and shuts everybody up and, earns the right to be in those top 20 conversations again and wins over Bulls fans once again. Bulls fans, let me know down in the comment section how you're feeling about Zach Lavine. I've seen a ton of Bulls fans be super critical. That could just be the stuff I watch. I'm not tapped into all the Bulls stuff, so I'm definitely, interested to see what you guys think about him. Are you excited to see what he can do next season coming off that injury? Do you think there is a possibility that what I said could be true, that he does that? I think that would be so fun as a story, and just for him personally, I really do wish that happens for him, and I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of response Zach Lavine is going to give to everybody hating on him basically for the last season. One thing's for sure, the talent is there, and I think with these young players and with this focus on young exciting talent, you're gonna see Zach Lavine be a more leadership type of role. I think he's capable of that, and I think that's what we'll see next season. Hopefully he can put together one of the best seasons of his career. He certainly should for his reputation if he is able to. Coby White, one of the greatest stories last season, total breakout stud for you guys at that point guard position. Coby White is really more of a combo guard to me, but last season, man, did he put together a good one. I actually think, Tyrese Maxey won the most improved player, and there's I of course support that as a Sixers fan, but if I'm a Bulls fan, I'm looking at that and saying, well, Tyrese Maxey's great, but to go from 10 points a game to 19 on, best efficiency of his career, to boost your, almost double your assist numbers, almost double your rebounds, 7 attempts from 3 per game on 38%. He was probably the second best player on this team last season. I think that's pretty fair to say across the entire season, and he ended up playing 79 games and starting 78 of them. I mean, if Coby White could continue to expound on his monster season last year, this is the guard of the future, and I believe all-star, caliber two-way player. He's a great athlete. He is, again, probably the second best scorer on this team next year. No question. I mean, he's going to be a 20-point per game guy on good efficiency again, a unique type of offensive talent, and I believe his defense is good as well. Let me know down in the comment section how we're feeling about Coby White. I'm sure the fans love him, if I'm being honest. Another young player that I like quite a bit, who's had a little bit of an up and down start to their career, but actually put together a phenomenal season, career best last year, is Ayo Dosunmu. Ayo is, again, probably more of a point guard to me. He possesses solid playmaking ability. He possesses solid scoring ability. He was a really solid defender. I'm not sure if that's still the case, because I heard that his defense has been inconsistent throughout the 3 seasons he's been with Chicago. But the big jump to me is from the 3-point line last season. 4 attempts per game, 40% from 3. That is by far his best. And this is a guy that can come in probably off the bench. It'll depend on someone else we're going to talk about. But Ayo Dosunmu I like a lot for a lot of reasons, and I think his improved shooting numbers are going to be massive for him moving forward. I think you see a similar type of production next season, and I think you see somewhere slightly under 30 minutes per game in a backup or rotation guard role. We'll have to see what it looks like, but that is the role will be dictated by what kind of minutes Lonzo Ball plays next season and how healthy he's going to be, because you bring Lonzo Ball over in the 2022 season season, and he only ended up playing 35 games for the Bulls, which is actually crazy to look back on because, you know, he was so great for them in that time with the Bulls. And he had a very unprecedented surgery to his knee. It was like some kind of cartilage replacement. I think he's the first NBA player ever to have that, and he hasn't played basketball since 2022, which is very unfortunate. But I'm seeing a lot of things about how Lonzo Ball expects to play most of the season next year, and he's, you know, getting healthy, he's getting his body right. And I've seen some reports that says that he actually said that he will play opening night. Like, he's that close. He has been cleared for advanced activity, or, you know, I think that's the quote, but, you know, basically he's doing all kinds of things that, you know, on the basketball floor he hasn't been able to do because of his knee, and now he's actually ramping up the activity. I do think if Lonzo Ball ends up playing 60 games next season, 50 games next season, you're pretty happy with that. He returned on his player option. This is a make or break season for his career, whether or not he can play that many games consistently and provide the same type of two-way versatility that you saw with the Bulls in 2022. I mean, he is one of the best perimeter defenders when he's healthy, right? Lockdown perimeter guy, great steal numbers, right? 2 steals per game. He is a great playmaker, not just good, great. Imagine a lineup with him and Josh Giddey. The playmaking would be absolutely outrageous. His shooting is exceptional. You know, the last season with the Bulls in 2022, again, 35 game sample size, but he did it with the Pelicans as well. 42% from 3 on 7.4 attempts per game. I mean, those are exceptional 3-point numbers, okay? And a lot of these are difficult threes. So if Lonzo Ball can be anywhere near 60 games on those type of similar productions on both ends, that is the biggest X factor for me of this team. You know, we've basically counted Lonzo Ball out of the you know, Bulls lineups. When we think about the Bulls the last couple of years, Lonzo Ball is like an afterthought. He's not even something we consider. Now he has to be, because he's going to play in some capacity next season, knock on wood, and I hope it's a long, healthy season where he can revitalize his career, earn another contract, whether it's with the Bulls or not. But again, make or break season for Lonzo Ball, and knock on wood that he looks similar to his form with the Bulls in 2022. Certainly the biggest wild card for the Chicago Bulls next season, and maybe honestly for the entire NBA. What type of Lonzo Ball we get and how many games? Let me know down in the comment section. I'm sure Bulls fans, you probably know a lot more about this than I do. So what is the latest on Lonzo Ball? Because I'm seeing that he's definitely going to play. We just, I guess, don't know how much or what it's going to look like. So with the guard rotation on this team, you basically had to cover for him the last few years, and in doing so, you add a lot of guards. You know, Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu, Josh Giddey is basically a guard. He probably won't play at the guard, but like, you know what I mean? So there are plenty of things that are going to be a factor in this guard rotation, Lonzo Ball being the biggest of them. He's definitely your starting point guard if he's 100% healthy, and one of the better ones in the league if he's healthy. So, you know, hopefully we could see that type of 2022 Lonzo Ball for 60 plus games. Bulls fans, let me know if I'm off base on this. Nikola Vucevic is, you know, a disputed, I guess, center, like where to rank him. You know, he is obviously a double-double machine. He is a great, you know, offensive talent at center. He is one of the more consistent, you know, double-double centers in the entire league offensively. You know, I've actually heard that his defense, because I don't watch every Bulls game, a lot of people say his defense is bad, but I've actually heard it's not terrible. It's not even bad at all. People make it worse than it is. He's also, you know, in his time with the Bulls, a consistent player for the most part. Since 2022, he's played 73 games or higher every season. People say he had a down year last year. His shooting numbers look pretty bad, you know, for him, but like he still ended up averaging 18 points per game, almost, you know, if I'm rounding up, 11 rebounds, 3.3 assists, like that's pretty great. So, you know, I don't know what type of Nikola Vucevic we're going to expect next season. Probably similar as last year, right? And if he truly was as bad as people say last season, you know, hopefully it can bounce back to like a 2023, 2022 form of him where he was, you know, exceptional in 2023 efficiency wise. So, you know, maybe we'll see that type of game from Nikola Vucevic. We'll have to see. You know, certainly he's your starting center. I know there have been reports that they're trying to trade him. It would make sense for them to try to trade him. Maybe by the end of the season we see something, but his contract is, it's nothing crazy, but maybe it's a little larger than some teams would like that would be looking for a player of Vucevic's skill set. So, you know, we'll just have to see what that looks like, you know, but this is a player that could be traded by the end of the deadline. You know, let me know down in the comment section, what are we feeling about Vucevic? Another guy that I just don't know. I don't watch every Bulls game. I can look at the numbers. I can basically say what I know about him already, which is that he's a great scorer, rebounder, offensive player, you know, passer from the center position, dynamic offensive player, great rebounder, floor spacer for the center. I know he shot poorly from the 3 last season, but please let me know about his consistency last year. That is something I'm definitely interested in hearing. We talked about Jalen Smith, how he's going to fit on this team. You know, last season, the shooting was immaculate, okay? And the unique ability on both ends of the floor is going to keep him in this rotation. You know, he is technically a power forward. He'd be an undersized center, but I think you could play him there realistically in a smaller lineup. You it could be a similar thing to what you did with Drummond last season. Obviously, Drummond is one of the bigger centers, but like, I just see him, like, I'm looking at this rotation and I'm seeing these players, and you got a ton of power forwards. You probably going to play Matas Buzelis at the power forward, probably going to play Patrick Williams at the power forward. So like, the power forward minutes are going to be huge. When I look at this team on paper, like, he's probably going to be your backup five, but just another thing we'll have to see what happens with. Certainly there are multiple factors, including, the Vucevic trade situation. So, we'll have to see how these minutes are distributed, but I would expect him to be the backup five. Chris Duarte, we already talked about, we could see a situation where Chris Duarte is a rotation guard. You do have some big time guard depth on this team. I mean, we talked about Coby White, we talked about Ayo Dosunmu, Josh Giddey's basically a guard, and then also you do have guys that are, in line for a spot. We could see Jevon Carter, still be a backup point guard. We could see Lonzo Ball take over that point guard spot. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of role Chris Duarte has. But let's talk about Jevon Carter, who you signed last year to a multi-year deal, who had a career year with the Milwaukee Bucks. He's an NBA journeyman, and his season with the Bucks in 2023 warranted that contract. I liked the move at the time because I like Jevon Carter as a solid, backup guard. He tries a lot on defense. He's a competitor, and he can heat up at times offensively. And I think his, on-ball playmaking capabilities are pretty solid. He's never going to be a crazy, high volume scorer or playmaker or anything like that, but I just think he's good depth as a backup point guard. Last season played 72 games for you guys in a limited role. Didn't shoot the ball well on, any level, so that is something I guess to be concerned about, but I like his competitive, fiery nature. I think he probably has a bounce back season if he does end up getting a role on this team. Torrey Craig, another NBA journeyman who you acquired last season, I believe, in free agency, played 53 games for you guys, ended up starting 19 of them. Torrey Craig's a 3-and-D guy, and he is a solid shooter. 39% from three last season. Second year in a row, he's averaged that on 3 attempts per game. So, 3-and-D guy that I think is capable of some offensive pop at times, if you are going to play him like that. Good rebounder as well. So I think Torrey Craig probably has a 3-and-D role next season. Talked about Patrick Williams, who is, one of probably, if you're looking at the numbers, one of the best 3-and-D guys in the league. I mean, from all accounts, his defense is very good. And I know his field goal percentage, like as a player that is technically a power forward or a small forward, 44% from the field could be better, but that's not necessarily what you're looking at here. A lot of these shots are 3-pointers. That's really where he earns his minutes, is the 3-point shooting. Excellent shooter, excellent defender. I just like Patrick Williams a lot. I think he's a great re-signing for that 5-year long-term extension. I know there are people disappointed with him since they drafted him at 4th overall, but I think it's great value, for the shooting. Like, this is for the forward position. I'm not sure you're going to find, a more consistent 3-point shooter throughout their career on that level of value that can play defense. So Josh Giddey, he is definitely a starter, one of the guys that's going to be the focal points of the offense. The playmaking is going to be mostly up to him, I would imagine. He's going to do a great job. You're going to see different type of playmaking with the Chicago Bulls that you haven't seen in a long time, really since Lonzo Ball was the prominent playmaker there. And I think Josh Giddey is a similar level. Like, he has unique court vision, passing ability. Some of the passes he makes are next level. Just, not a lot of players can do that, especially at his size. He can see over defenders to be able to see the court well. Great rebounder, triple-double threat. He can score a little bit. This is a player that's going to start, probably get some of the most minutes on the team night to night. And I think having good athletes around him, like Patrick Williams, like Zach Lavine, like Coby White, is going to really enhance his game, basically like the Thunder had it. So, he is an important player to surround athletes with that can shoot and, finish inside. And I think that's what the Bulls are really putting around him. I would expect the starting lineup next season to look something like Lonzo Ball off the bench right away. I'm not sure if he's going to be on a minutes restriction. I would imagine he probably will be for the first few games. So I think he'll probably come off the bench right away. And also, I don't think him and Josh Giddey are necessarily the best pairing, because while Lonzo Ball's a great shooter and, certainly one of the better catch and shoot guys on the team, I just think you stagger them throughout the game so that the playmaking is always on point. I would imagine, in most scenarios, Lonzo Ball is off the bench next season to start the year at least. And then you see what he looks like, and then maybe, work him into the lineup. But let's just say he's 100% healthy. Then that's clearly your starting point guard. And then it's Coby White. Maybe you can make a case. You say, oh, Coby White comes off the bench as the scoring 6-man spark plug. I doubt it. He's too good of a player not to start. But if you want to say he could, in a Lonzo Ball lineup, I think that's possible. Zach Lavine is going to be your starting 3 or 2, probably your 2. So it's probably going to be Coby White, Zach Lavine, Josh Giddey, Patrick Williams, and Nikola Vucevic. You could make a case that Buzelis is going to get Patrick Williams' starting job. I don't know about that. I think Patrick Williams probably makes the most sense as a player that you could put in really any lineup. And I think providing his athleticism and defensive versatility, as well as the catch and shoot elite shooting numbers, he's certainly going to be, be, probably in the starting lineup, assuming Matas Buzelis isn't like way more ready than I think he is. So, it's probably some variation of that. You could see Lonzo Ball slide in. You could see Buzelis off the bench or at the starting 4. You could see Coby White as the 6th man. I think he's just too good not to play and too important to your future not to build around. Vucevic, certainly the starting center, no question about it. But, as far as the 2, 3, 4, I think is up for debate. As far as the point guard, it's probably either Coby White or Lonzo Ball. It depends on what we're going to see from Lonzo Ball. But yeah, Buzelis certainly will have a upwards of 20, 25 minutes, maybe even 30 minutes per game role. You're going to see a lot of Matas Buzelis. I would imagine it would be really ineffective not to play him at least near 30 minutes a game. We'll see how he looks coming out next season, but I think you do have to, kind of put aside whatever his production is. Like, if the numbers aren't great, I mean, keep him out there. Like, he's got to be able to work through his mistakes as such a young, talented player. I think it could be a situation where he's a little bit inefficient as a rookie, but I think, him learning through mistakes, playing big minutes next to really good players is going to be so valuable for him. A lot of these great players on this team are veterans, like Zach Lavine, like Nikola Vucevic, like Patrick Williams. Like, these are, kind of younger veterans other than Vucevic, but they are veterans, and I think that's going to be big for Buzelis to play alongside with. Also, I think putting shooters around Buzelis is big, and obviously, you want to maximize the shooting around Josh Giddey if you can, because that's probably the best thing you can do. Provide him with athletes that can shoot and defend. Okay, so Torrey, another guy that has played a lot of minutes last season. He is a forward. We'll have to see what his role looks like. Again, there's a lot of forwards on this team that are going to get minutes. Not so sure about him. Julian Phillips, another forward. These guys are really going to have to do a lot before the season starts as far as the practices and preseason to earn their way into the rotation, because there's just so many great versatile forwards on this team that are big enough to be able to take their role, right? So as far as the roster, I think we covered pretty much everyone that I really want to. I mean, Javonte Green, I forgot about Javonte Green. Let me know down in the comment section, was he injured last season, or he had to be injured last season because he only played 9 games. He started 5 of them. The season before that, 32 games. Like, is he not in the rotation? I wouldn't possibly imagine he's not in the rotation. Javonte Green's a dog, and he's another guy that I think is going to have a big role on this team, assuming he's healthy. And, I know that Bulls fans like him because of his hustle, and last season in the 9 games he played, he actually played really well. I mean, he's a great finisher. He's a bowling ball out there. Like, the guy's 6'5", but he can really play 2 or 3. Good shooter as well, 37%. I kind of see Javonte Green similar to like a PJ Tucker. I don't know if that makes sense, Bulls fans, let me know. Similar size players, similar, stocky builds, and just solid 3-and-D effort guys. I think Javonte Green's a way better scorer than PJ Tucker ever was, but I really like Javonte Green as a glue guy and a, high energy, gritty player on this team. And I think he'll, certainly be in the rotation as far as the wing defenders, but he provides a lot of toughness that I don't think a ton of other players on this team can provide. So, maybe we'll see him in a role. Let me know, again, Bulls fans. There are a lot of players on this team that are absolutely wild cards. Like Zach Lavine. I mean, you can make a case your best 3 players are wild cards. Like Zach Lavine, Lonzo Ball, and Nik Vucevic are all like, it's unclear what their season will be next season with this team. Like, will Vucevic even play past the deadline? Will he be traded, or is he going to play better than he did last season? That's a wild card right there. Zach Lavine's a massive wild card. We haven't even seen him play basketball in a long time, and when he did, it was a little bit underwhelming. And then Lonzo Ball hasn't played in years, and we don't, quite frankly, know what kind of Lonzo Ball we're going to get. So these 3 guys are going to be the key to this season. If they, let's say a perfect scenario, okay, this is the X Factor take that I have been waiting to make until right now. Shout out to you for sticking around if you did to listen to it. Let's say there's a world where the Zach Lavine scenario I talked about happens, where he comes out and looks like his best version of himself that he's ever looked like, takes the leadership role, puts up 27 points per game on good efficiency. Let's say that happens. Let's say Vucevic plays like he did in 2023. Let's say Lonzo Ball comes back and he's just as good as he ever was, plays 65 plus games, is healthy at the end of the season. Let's say Coby White takes another leap. Let's say Buzelis comes out and he's pretty ready, maybe a little bit more ready than we think. Let's say Josh Giddey provides, just as good of an impact on this team as we think he will. Day 1, Jalen Smith develops into a consistent piece. Let's say all those things happen, okay, and they happen throughout the season regularly, and gradually all these players build chemistry. You could literally make a case if all those things happen, and again, it is a long shot, I would say. Maybe not a long shot. It is certainly on and up in the air, and certainly unpredictable whether any of that stuff will happen. Let's say it all does. Can you seriously tell me that 6 teams in the Eastern Conference are better than that team? All of these guys at their best and healthy for throughout the season? I don't know, man. I think that sounds like a playoff team to me. I mean, mean, you have the young and unique talent that not a lot of teams do. You have the top end talent in Zach Lavine, in Coby White, and Vucevic, these great scorers. The defenders are pretty good. I mean, you could use a little bit more defense, right? I mean, I like Dosunmu off the bench. I like Coby White. I like, Patrick Williams, one of the better defenders, Javonte Green, Jalen Smith. Like, there are defenders, but I just, Buzelis as well. I should have mentioned him probably first, but there are versatile defenders on this team. I just think, the starting lineup and like your best top tier players aren't necessarily known as defenders, primarily Zach Lavine, but I guess it could be good enough. Billy Donovan usually does pretty well with that stuff. The pace will certainly be way faster. Bulls were like bottom of the league in pace last season. They played a super slow, methodical brand of basketball. They didn't turn the basketball over much, which was helpful, but like they're going to play so fast next season. It's insane with all these athletes and, good playmakers. I just think if all those things happen, they're at minimum a 6 seed. And if, there is a world where none of that happens and it actually happens in the reverse and they're a top end lottery team. Okay. Vucevic gets traded. Zach Lavine comes out and he's bad. Lonzo Ball, plays 6 games and, can't stay on the floor. And then, then it's just basically Coby White and a bunch of young guys. Okay. That is also, I would say, maybe just as likely of a scenario, but I think it's way more fun to talk about the other one where the Bulls come out and shock the world next season and all of those great things happen. But I just think as far as upside, like this team is super high. I mean, you're not exactly even trying to compete next season, no question. Like you're trying to actually flip these assets, Zach Lavine and Vucevic, for a rebuild, long-term rebuild. Like most of the good players on this team are young, and it's clear that that's the vision, right? If you could have traded Zach Lavine and Nick Vucevic, you would have this offseason, and I would expect that to continue. If Zach Lavine comes out and he plays super well at the start of the season, I think he could get traded. If Vucevic comes out super well, I think he gets traded. Like these are things that can happen. We'll just have to see how committed the Bulls are to, having a winning season next year, and what that looks like. But Lonzo Ball, Zach Lavine, these are the X factors. So make sure you guys, that's basically my spiel on this. Let me know down in the comment section, Bulls fans, how are we feeling about, the Bulls? What are we thinking about this roster? There are certainly 2 ways to look at it. I'm trying to look at the positive and the fun, most exciting way for me, which is that they could put all those things together and be an X factor team. And then all of a sudden next year's offseason looks totally different. Now you're not necessarily going for a rebuild. You're trying to, add pieces, right? And then you'd have a good mix of like top end talent that is in their prime and maybe a little older. And then, for veteran leadership. And then you also have like young developing guys that could, you could bank on to get better. So that would be interesting. Either way, let me know down in the comment section. If I got anything wrong, tell me down below. I'm totally wanting to know the information I got wrong. I get stuff wrong every deep dive, and this will be no exception. So, please just try to keep it respectful. I'm trying my best. I'm doing a lot of research. I'm just not, I don't watch 82 Bulls games this season. So I hope you guys can, understand. Please help me if you can down in the comments. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I want to tap in with the Bulls fan base. I'm sure you guys are excited for this season, that they're actually doing something positive or, something at all. I think that's a great feeling if you're a Bulls fan. Like, oh, finally, we can like look forward now. We don't have to scream at the organization until they do something. That's probably the feeling you have. If I'm wrong about that, let me know. Otherwise, subscribe to this channel. We upload content just like this every day. We're going to be doing every team for a deep dive just like this by the end of the offseason. We've already covered 18. This will be the 19th, I believe. So there's a great chance, if you're not a Bulls fan, we already covered your team. And if we haven't, we're certainly going to do it by the end of the, week and next week. So please subscribe. We're on the road to 13K. We're actually really close. Maybe by the time this video comes out, we'll hit it. I'm not too sure, but please subscribe either way. Then it'll be on the road to 14K. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Any feedback is appreciated, positive or negative, as long as it's constructive and not like blatant hate or, like whatever, some weird stuff. The season's coming up in just a few months. Honestly, just a couple months, maybe like 2 months basically from now. And we upload content just like this, similar effort, similar quality every single day. So please, be a part of it. DeHave Nation needs you. Trying to put a little bit of a positive spin on the NBA community, because there's a lot of toxicity, and I've been known to engage in it a little bit from time to time, but I'm trying to move forward and, be a positive influence on the NBA community. And I think that is, something that is, you won't find on every channel. So make sure you guys subscribe, drop a like on the video if you guys did enjoy it. Really helps out the video. Share it to as many people as you can, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bulls fans, how we feeling? Let me know. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day today, and look forward to next season. And I will catch you guys tomorrow. This is your boy DeHave, and as always, peace.